Welcome to the Winning Mentality Podcast, Episode 2. Every step forward is a win, no matter how big or small. I'm Coach Bwoo, and we're diving into the philosophy behind winning mentality fitness, how it was born, how it's grown, and what it means for me, my clients, and maybe even for you. So let's get into it. Let's start with the core belief of winning mentality. Every step forward is a win. That's just a motto I've grown up to believe in, and how it's shaped the way I coach and the way I train. Um, it's not about instant transformations or focusing solely on the end result. It's about the journey, those small, consistent steps that lead to lasting success. Too often, fitness is seen as a sprint to an end goal, whether it's losing 20 pounds as quickly as possible, running a marathon without really training for it. Those are examples, but here's the truth. Fitness is a lifelong journey. There's no set timeline for results. In some cases, there might be, if you're going to do a competition or getting ready for a wedding, those kind of things, you have a set date and this is what we need to work towards. We might not achieve, a perfect physique or body, but that is something that we can try to attain as quickly as possible, or whatever that timeline might be. But the only thing that really matters is the effort you put in, the dedication, which is what will get you those results. Whether you're taking a massive leap or inching forward. So for my clients, this philosophy has just made all the difference. Some have been with me for 6 to 8 years, not because they achieved quick results, but because they've learned to navigate the ups and downs of life with balance. Whether they've lost progress due to major life changes or needed to adjust, their approach, we've always celebrated the small wins along the way. And fitness isn't linear. Life happens, career shifts, families grow, priorities change, and that's why we adapt. A lot of times in my programs that I've created for my clients, it's not always a one size fits all solution. Everybody's different. Everybody moves differently. Goals can be relatively the same, but depends really on their lifestyle. Could come down to diet, how much they're sleeping, stress levels, and so even day-to-day habits and workouts will be different. You might feel great one day, and the next day you just feel shitty and don't want to work out. But those are some of the things that we work through as a coach to help our clients. I've had clients who've lost progress only to come back stronger because we embraced, different programming styles and adapted to new routines. Small wins build momentum, and eventually that momentum leads to consistent victory. And when we talk about winning mentality, that mindset, when I think about mindset, I can't help but think about Kobe Bryant, one of the late great NBA basketball players, and his Mamba mentality. His relentless pursuit of being the best version of himself is something I deeply admire. He focused on constant improvement, never letting setbacks define him. And that is what winning mentality fitness stands for. It's not just about the physical gains, it's about pushing yourself mentally, finding growth in the struggle, and embracing every opportunity to improve. When we talk about improvement and the struggle, let's talk about something people often shy away from, which is failure. And that could be in the gym or in life. But I see failure as a good thing. For me, if we're talking about me becoming a coach, and in the early days of training, if you remember in the first episode, I talked about, becoming a coach and interning and learning the ropes of becoming a coach and all the difficulties that came in between. I actually failed at being a coach because I couldn't even wake up on time to get to a class or get to a client. And that was something I really had to learn and adapt my lifestyle, which is most importantly going to bed early so that I can wake up on time and make it to a session. And like that's so simple. But Think about when you were 20 or 21 in college, or at that age, and you're going out all the time, and you get little sleep, and you just want to go go go. Those are some of the things that I learned um, to have to adapt to. Of like, all right, I can still do all these things, but how can I manage my time? How can I you know figure out a schedule that is beneficial to me, and so I can and make my career out of it, right? Um, and not be at a point where I am today. So when we talk about failure, those are some of the things that can happen in life. And then when we're talking about in the gym, failures in the gym, um, it's actually a good thing. When you push your muscles to failure, you're actually helping them grow stronger. And this applies, you know, to more than just physical strength. Failures in the gym, whether it's missing a lit or struggling through a tough workout, those are all opportunities. They teach us resilience, patience, and the importance of perseverance. And it's the same in life. We learn, we adapt, and we keep moving forward. So that is the stem of winning mentality and my failures, and how failing in a gym setting can actually be good for you. So the origin of the winning mentality fitness. I talked about being a coach, but it actually stems from my background as an athlete and my journey to become a coach. Growing up, winning was always the goal, but I quickly learned that achieving that end goal required a series of smaller victories. Whether it was mastering a technique or form, building strength and endurance, or simply showing up on tough days. We take a look at Kobe Bryant's career in the NBA. It's not like he just jumped into the league and was, MVP. He had to work his way as a rookie, learn the ropes from the guys that played before him, and then always striving to be better. And of course, his mentality was, I'm going to be the best. And he just had that mindset. He put the work, the determination, the perseverance to get to where he was. Won 5 championships, multiple, you know, scoring titles, MVPs, all that kind of thing. But it didn't just happen overnight. He put in the work. And here we also put in the work. As an athlete, I put in the work. And sometimes things didn't work out in the gym space for my clients. Programs didn't work, and I had to pivot. But every adjustment, every little ounce step of progress was a win, and that is why I keep saying, every step forward is a win. Just keep that in mind of like, all right, I'm doing something to help myself, whether it's a huge step or a small step. Every step forward is going to be a win. And one of the biggest turning points came through my collaboration with a former client and a friend who became integral to the winning mentality brand. And the things he did for me when we first started was creating a logo, understanding everything I just talked about, where I came from, my background, what I wanted to do as a coach, and a little bit, what I want to do in the future. And that is what helped me work with him, collaborate with him to create a logo and a brand that defined what I do in this fitness space, and also just defined me as a person and as a coach. So that leads me to a special guest today, someone who's been with me with the early days, helping share this philosophy. Please welcome Aldrich Wingsiong. What's up, Aldrich? Welcome in, man.
Yo, what's going on? I'm happy to be here. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
thanks for coming on. I'm excited to have my first guest. Um, Talk about the brand and just kind of catch up, talk about what it's like for you to train with the coach and things like that. But before we dive into that, man, how you been? Let's catch up. What's going on in your life?
Yeah. Honestly, it's like super busy right now. I'm like in transition mode because with the move to San Francisco. So like for context, for people who don't know, I'm right now living in Toronto,
Sure.
where I grew up in Canada. Right after graduating university, I moved to San Francisco for 5 years. That's how me and Brandon met, or that's how we met. And 2021, the pandemic hit, I actually moved back.
That's
to
right.
Toronto. So I've been here for the last, where are we at now? Dang, it's almost 2025. So about like 3 years.
Yep.
And literally going 180 again, moving back to San
Hell
Francisco
yeah. Going
because my
back to the Bay.
partner lives there. Back to the Bay. I guess I guess Kendrick won, so I have to go back to California.
Yeah. Bring him back.
So yeah, it's busy. And basically, I had to get some stuff organized even today to start getting my apartment ready to rent out. So we just locked in our place in San Francisco. So just really busy time, and the holidays are coming up. But other
Yeah, man.
than that,
I'll have to get to see you in person.
I know, I
We'll,
know.
we'll do another episode in person.
I mean, last time, it was barely a catch up because you were out getting married and stuff.
Yeah,
The
I
wedding
mean,
was really
during our
fun.
wedding, we definitely were like, oh man, I wish we got to talk more to everybody, to all the guests, but it was just so like such a blur. I know you were there. I'm glad you guys had
I
fun.
was there.
I'll have to show you all the raw footage because you and Angela were, you guys were dancing on the dance floor. There was some good footage for sure.
Dude, that was hella fun. And it's like literally the common story with every couple getting married. Like you don't have time to catch up with everyone. It's just nice to
Yeah,
share a moment with everyone there, but it's like a blur. But we had fun. Angela and I had fun. It was an awesome time. And yeah, I'm glad, like I'm excited to just like be back in the Bay and actually have like a proper hangout post
yeah,
all
dude.
that.
And you're engaged, man. Congrats. You guys planning
Yes.
that wedding too?
Yeah, holy crap. I mean, speaking of just stuff happening, yeah, I got engaged this year, which is super exciting. Got to do it in like beautiful British Columbia, and we're
Sweet.
slowly getting prepped and getting stuff ready for wedding, which, still got some time, but like the date's there and just like bit by bit, just like
Yep.
planning stuff out, which is nice. I do like just the slower pace of things.
Oh no, for sure. Like take your time on it. Don't rush it. You'll feel rushed by like that last month, so definitely take your
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I'm cherishing the moment now when things are like pretty easy, pretty calm, and I think Angela is excited to plan a lot of this stuff, so I'm letting her kind of like drive it, but still being there to like listen to certain decisions, kind of weighing in and helping out. It's like a nice, solid pace, and I like.
For sure, man. I completely understand. Cool, but like before we dive into you helping me with the brand of winning mentality, all the logos and the talks that we had even before that, let's take it back to I want to say 2017 when we first met. I want to say it's 2017, maybe late 2016. But like, how did you get into the fitness space? What drew you to it back then, and how did you end up finding a coach?
Yeah. So, I mean, even before that, like, just to know a bit about me and how I view fitness and like, the gym and all that stuff is like I grew up not athletic at all. With my family, it was all about studies and academics. And
Hmm.
so I saw like physical education, I saw gym class as like a waste of time. And, I didn't need it. I just need to get the mark and I move on. A lot of the people who were taking like gym class, taking weight training. I remember talking to like friends and classmates, and they're just like, yeah, I just want to get big. I want to start just lifting a ton of weights, two plates, get jacked. And I just didn't get it. No, the goal wasn't interesting to me.
Hmm.
So I just did like, minimal physical activity. I like sports. Like I like playing basketball with friends and just playing different sports. Used to play softball like way back when.
Right.
But fast forward, once I graduated, I moved to SF, and what I got really into since moving to San Francisco was dance. Like I
That's right.
love hip hop ever since I was a kid. Love the music, love the culture, and that's probably one of the things we like bond over a lot.
Oh, for
During our
sure.
our time training. So I started taking dance class and choreography, mix of popping, and it was just like really fun. And that was like a lot of energy. I put a lot of energy towards that, and each time I'm like, man, it's so fun. There's a ton. I was such a beginner, so there's like a lot to improve on. And one thing I just noticed when it came to dance was like I just couldn't hit certain moves as well. I wasn't as flexible. I couldn't move, I didn't have the balance. So I just started noticing those things and I'm just like, how do I improve that? Because the way I see dance is like it's communication, right? It's like telling a story. And if I see like the body as a way, as a canvas to tell that story, I kind of ask myself like, how do I tell a better story through that? And so that kind of sparked a lot of my thinking to be like, well, if I want to express certain, lyrics better, such that it hits and can convey to an audience better, that's like mission accomplished. And so I started being like, okay, I really want to work on this flexibility thing and this mobility thing, but I didn't know how. One of the things too with the gym, big box gyms, that like intimidates me is like I don't know how to use like half the like
Right,
I don't know if
right.
I can cuss, but I didn't know how
Yeah,
to use half
yeah.
the shit in there. And, like you see a squat rack and everyone's just like waiting for it, and I'm like I don't know why everyone's all about the squat rack and all these other machines don't get used, and so you didn't really want I didn't really want to ask questions, and so when I thought about it, I'm like, well, I think it'd be nice to learn from someone who can actually see how I move, who can understand my goals, and honestly, just to keep me accountable because I'm really crappy at staying consistent. I'd buy a gym membership, go for like a month, and just like drop off. So I saw it also as like an accountability piece, and that's when I took the plunge. I think it was literally like the stereotypical like New Year's where
Yep.
I looked at a bunch of personal training gyms and, Yelp, Google, and then I'm like, this one looks really popular, went for consultation, and that ended up becoming, Perform for Life, where you work at. And that was literally my gateway into it. And the process was like really cool because it was exactly what I was looking for, where they tailored the, the experience to me, knowing where
hmm
I'm at, what my goals are. So yeah, long story short, that's kind of how I got into the personal training space. And it, I mean, the reward was fantastic.
Awesome. And when you were searching for, a personal trainer, were you looking for a certain type? Was it location, maybe? Like, what were more of the benefits for you to keep yourself accountable?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one thing I learned from myself, even if it's like work or personal training, like I want to be as close as possible
hmm
where I can walk there. Literally, like the only thing that will stop me from going is like my own two legs
Right.
and getting there. Versus if I had to take like a bus, public transport, or drive there, like I think that adds extra barriers to
Oh, it's
going
huge.
to a
It's huge.
place where I already don't feel like going.
hmm
Being able to walk somewhere was like a big thing. I actually didn't have like a picture or a vision as to like who was going to train me. It was more of
hmm
I had a vision of the process, and it was literally like
Got you.
I want someone who can give me like a custom program and schedule that like says, hey, this is something for Aldrich because I know this is what he's trying to go for. Like he's not trying to go for like you know the Hulk figure and just get
Right.
like massive arms, right? He wants like flexibility, he wants mobility, he wants to be able to dance and not get injured and have this be like a sustainable thing. And that was like yeah. So I think my biggest focus was more on the process.
Yeah, definitely. And so when you started at Perform for Life, actually, so at Perform for Life, what we would do is a coach, maybe more of a tenured coach, would perform a full assessment, a movement assessment, see how well you move. Based off of that, recommend a program that might be best fit for you. But then also at our boutique gym at that time was probably only 8 coaches at the time. So we would try to fit you best with like, okay, which coach would be the best fit for you? Not just like, hey, go train with this person. Hopefully you like them. Of course, there's always that dynamic of like your first time ever meeting with somebody and they're going to be putting you under weight and all that. And you're like, I hope this guy knows what he's doing, right? So you actually weren't even coaching with me to start. You were with Michael Crammon, who goes by AKA Cheddar, Ice Cheddar. That was his
Yeah.
breakdancing name. I think that actually was why that was a good fit because he knew he had the background of dancing and like what it took, the toll that takes on your body, right? So go into detail with that and how it was, even just your first session training with him and, you know, do you think it was a good fit, and why it was like the right move to take for yourself?
Yeah, I remember that first session really vividly, actually. It was the original location of G4L.
Yeah.
And I think I was just like nervous because I'm so used to thinking about the gym to be like this place where I just suffer and I'm like out of breath and dying. And so I'm like, oh man, do I really want like an hour of this? But I came on time. Um, and I just remember seeing Cheddar and meeting him for the first time. And it was like, it was cool, like really chill guy. And like knowing him more, I was just like, man, this guy's like super funny, easy to talk to. But my impression from that session was like the actual movements weren't anything crazy, right? Like I was thinking, oh, this is gonna be like a custom program, so we're gonna do some like really different things, but it was very, we did certain lifts. We did a couple of, I think it was just like mostly like full body stuff
Hmm.
from what I remember. But I think my biggest takeaway from that was just like, yeah, it was definitely like a push. We went through like a 1 hour session, but I came out of it not like
Dying.
dying. I feel like
Feel like you don't want to come
it
back.
was like, yeah, yeah. And that was like one of the first times I learned where it's like, oh, when you work out, you don't have to be like close to death each time, right? You don't
Right.
have to be like a failure each time. It actually, like what you said, it literally gave me the motivation and energy to come back to be like, oh, that wasn't bad. I'm like excited for the next session, what we do. And so, yeah, I think that was, if I were to like break or like summarize what that first session was, it's, very normal, anticlimactic as like it should be and not
No,
like
for sure.
expect anything crazy out of it.
Yeah, and I think the transition at that time, I think Cheddar was trying to expand on his own, and he created Whole Body Solutions. So that's his company that he runs now, and he just wanted to keep growing himself. And I think a lot of people will think, if your coach is leaving, either I'm gonna stop coming to this gym, maybe follow that coach. But I think because I worked closely with him at the time, he had the trust in me to take over and become your coach. And let's kind of dive into that. Like, how did you feel? I'm pretty sure we talked maybe a couple times in the gym, but it's not like we were talking on the daily.
Yeah.
That transition, because it happens every so often, but it does happen in this industry of like changing coach to coach, whether it's a transition like this. You had a coach in the past, maybe you stop for a while and then you try to go find another coach. It happens all the time. Go into kind of what that transition was like for you.
Yeah, it was a bit of a awkward transition just because I remember I just started and then I was
Hmm.
getting in a rhythm with Cheddar with Michael, and so I'm like I think we have like a good thing going, and then yeah, and then it was awesome. The way he handled it, he like called me right away and he's like, hey, just a heads up, like I'm doing my own thing. I'm gonna have like, my own gym and program, et cetera, et cetera. And he just gave me the option to be like, we can keep continuing training, but it'll be through this, or you can stay with B4L. And I think during that time, I'm like, man, I think I just started with Perform for Life, and I just wanna like continue with that same program because we just did like a consultation, etc.
Hmm.
And so at least there was a path forward to staying with the program and staying working with them. And so yeah, he was like, if that's the case, like the new coach we think you'd work well with is Brandon, and he's one of the first people to kind of start in the gym, so it's a good fit. We think it's a good fit. Also, he's big into sports training. He played basketball, and there's a lot of similarities there, especially with like explosive movements,
Hmm.
asymmetrical training, and like
Minutes and stuff like
balance,
that. Yeah.
etc. And then I don't know if it was like if Cheddar was like someone else, but he's just like I don't know if you see him in the gym. He's like the Filipino dude with like the braids. And I
I did
remember
have I
yeah,
did
I
have
did.
braids back then.
And that like to me, I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about. It was so distinct. It was like the
Right, right.
one dude who had like these like long ass braids. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, we never really talked, so I didn't really know like how you'd be, what like the impression was. I was just like, oh, I hope like, we click, but I'm like down for it. And yeah, I think that's when we started working together once that transition happened.
Yeah. And we pretty much were training all the way through pretty much up until the pandemic, maybe a little bit before that. So I'd say a good like 2 years of just on training. But at a certain point too, which I think is the end goal for you, is to be able to learn, how to train on your own and like basically build up that confidence, the knowledge to be able to do something on your own, so that maybe you don't have to rely on a trainer, for the rest of your life. So, what was that transition like? Because a lot of people want to be able to do that, but also are okay with sticking with a trainer, for as long as they want.
Yeah. I mean, I can talk about it from like when we started working together, the actual like in the middle of the program and like when
Yeah,
I decided to transition out. But yeah, the first few sessions. So in terms of cadence, I think I was seeing you in the beginning like twice a week.
yeah,
So 2 sessions a week, and it was like right in the morning. I think that's also around a time
like
when
8 a.m.
around 8 a.m. y'all like just opened also the Hayes Valley location. That was like
Yeah, yeah,
the
second
grand
location.
opening, which is really cool because I think that was like really a lot closer to my
Hmm.
place. 8 a.m. session, and each one I think we focused on major muscles. You actually taught me like I think that was the first time I literally like squatted and did deadlifts and like the major lifts, bench
Hmm.
press, etc. And it was cool because I got to learn the mechanics of it to be like, oh, this is what you have to
Right,
look out for. Here's how like your glutes and should be positioned such that you don't get injured. And it was just awesome to have you there to tell me like this is why you position yourself this way and this is what you think about such that you activate the right muscles and you prevent any injury happening, because I think if I try to do that in a generic gym without any instruction, I'll just like try to copy someone and it'll be like awkward and maybe
right.
I pull something. So I learned a lot of that, and there was definitely a lot of also dynamic movement that you go through, that you put me through. A lot of like dynamic warm ups, similar lifts, but things that were off balance. I remember we'd use like what's it called? The Bonsu balls, or like
Oh
those
yeah, the
things
Bosu
that
balls,
you,
the Bosu balls.
Bosu balls, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I'd be there balancing while doing a squat, while trying to like, I remember catch like a football or
yep.
something. Like it's just like
And we're just
really
having fun with
cool
it too,
mixtures.
right?
Oh, dude, like that was like the biggest thing was like I learned was having fun with it was a big part of it, where the exercises and the actual movements are fun, but also just being in a smaller gym where you just couldn't kind of like kick it with people. All the
Yep,
coaches there were super cool, and it just felt like a little tight knit family, just like talking to each other while still getting
for
the
sure.
job done.
Exactly. Would
So
you say it kind of matched, a dancing session in a sense where like you're with this group, you're working on something, but you're also just having fun with it? Like it kind of matched that environment.
yeah, I'd say so. I think definitely the aspect of like changing your perspective of what working out and being physically active means. Because
Hmm.
at first I thought it was always going to be like these mechanical things, artificial lifts that I do. Whereas like you can actually do something more dynamic. You can actually do choreography and call that a workout. I think that was like a big similarity with dance and this, where I'm like, I can finish a session and I'm like, that was super fun, and I didn't even feel like I was working out
Hmm.
or in that mindset that I'm working out. It just felt like, you know, like playing, it's like playing basketball with friends. You don't think in your mind that like, oh, I am working out. I'm just like having fun.
Right. And the
So
sense
yeah,
of
that's
like
very
accountability,
similar.
it kind of disappeared in the sense where like I can keep myself accountable, but not really have to worry about that because now you had a space where one, you're working, you're progressing towards, getting stronger, more athletic, but it was a place where you felt comfortable and you're like, man, I can come back here, right? But then also now you got to a point where you're training 2 times a week. And you're like, you know what? Like, let's just try it. Let's try one time a week, and I can do something else on my own. And that almost it's just like you had more confidence of like, I love my time here, but now you can grow up for yourself and like try to do this on your own, right? And with that, I think that brought us to pretty much around like 2019. It was right before we were going to open up our third location at P Trail down in Bidai in San Francisco.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was like almost kind of perfect for you to like, you know what, that's a little too far. At the same time, I'm starting to get this on my own and like train on your own. So reflect on that. Like you're starting to work out on your own. I know there was a gym even closer to you, right? It was like your place, this gym, and like Blue Bottle, all in this little triangle. Like
That
I
blue
can go to
bottle
the
is key.
gym, get my coffee, and then you're set, and like you didn't have to worry about anything.
Yeah, dude, walking score of 100. Yeah. I well to kind of segue into that, one thing I was gonna say about the accountability piece is I'm not gonna front and be dishonest to be like, personal training is not cheap. There's
Hmm.
definitely like money involved in investment. And I definitely grew up in a culture and a family where it's you know, like we shouldn't be paying that much for
Right.
physical fitness. And so I never thought about like this thing should cost this much money. And I think growing up in like more like an immigrant family, coming for like living in the Philippines and moving here, it was almost like money was hard to come by,
For sure.
even growing up. And so now, fast forward when I am, recognize my privilege and my blessing that I have disposable income. I'm like, okay, obviously money is a big, like, I guess it's a big factor for me when it came to accountability because I've just been taught to not waste it, right? So
Hmm.
when you put this investment into personal training, I can literally do the math and I'm like, I wake up and there's definitely days where I'm like, I don't want to go to training. I'm like so
Yep.
early, I'm so tired,
Yep.
but I'm like, Aldrich, like, are you ready to like drop $200? Like, let's say like
Right. Right. Right.
hypothetical on
Oh,
this
exactly.
session,
Yeah.
right? And before I even like finish that thought, I'm already brushing my teeth and getting ready. I'm like, oh no, I'm not missing this session. I'm walking, I'm running, even if I'm like running late because that was enough. That made me feel uncomfortable enough such that I'm motivated to go there. And I think that's what we need when, especially in like your physical fitness journey or your health journey, is like an accountability piece. Because when there is no accountability there, let's say someone gifted me free personal training. I don't know how much it costs. It didn't hurt me to invest in it. If I miss one, I'm like, whatever.
Hmm.
So I think I needed that piece to kind of get the rhythm going. But after working with you for like a year and a half, I'm like, it got to a point where like my mind almost rewired where I don't need that piece anymore. It's like easy. It's part of my habit.
Hmm.
And that mixed with, getting the education, the information as to like how to do these things properly and why we do certain movements. I think that's when I reflected to myself to be like, I think this is the goal I wanted. And now I can go off and, apply what Brandon taught me or what other coaches there taught me by myself and continue working on these things, right? And be confident enough that I'm like targeting the right muscles. I'm doing the right things such that my goal of flexibility and mobility continue
Right.
forward. And I think that's when I made the decision to be like, okay, y'all did an amazing job and really equip me with the tools to go off on my own. And I think that honestly, in many industries, that is a sign of like a great coach and a great mentor. It isn't someone that you have to like rely on your whole life.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's like it's a stepping stone, right? To
Yeah.
get you to the next phase of where you want to be. And it goes kind of full circle because something like that helps you along the way. And then, you tell your friend or you refer somebody back to me. It's like a full circle of like, hey, I really trust this person. He helped me get to where I want to be. And sometimes you might get the question of like, well, how come you're not working with him anymore if he got you like all these results? But then it's like you tell your side of the story, and then they'll think, well, maybe I just need some guidance, and eventually, you'll be at a place where Aldrich is at. So I like that a lot, and I think that just shows, the personal growth on your side, how my coaching could help, you and other people around the world. But now that takes us to you back in Toronto. Now you're fully away from me, fully away from just America. But fast forward to like what 2020, you said 2021, you moved back to
2021.
Toronto, right? I wouldn't say we lost touch, but it wasn't like we were talking every day. Of course, I'd send you those Instagram memes or whatever it was, and we could always talk through that avenue. But um, at that time, I would say I was a little bit lost of like where I wanted to be at. for my training because I wasn't seeing many people in the gym. Fitness and it as a whole transitioned to more online. And I was like, man, I need to get myself out there again. How can I showcase what I do? At that time was more of like, how can I showcase it to like the social media world and get a name out there for myself? So that's when I reached out to you just because I knew you had more of this artistic side. You were working on side projects. You were designing a lot of shoes, as you can see in the background. You got a whole plethora of a wall in the back there, and you actually did a piece for me. It was during the Black Lives Matter movement, and it was something that we just collaborated on, and it was really cool to see you work on it step by step and like deliver it to me. So when I reached out to you and approached you with this idea of creating a logo, we actually didn't even have the name for Winning Mentality at the time. So how do you feel about that initial pitch? Did it spark something in you right away, or like were you hesitant about it?
Yeah, I think there was definitely like mixed feelings on my side. One of it was like excitement just because, like you said, like over the years we become friends. And so I was just excited to like do something for you and like pay it forward because you've like done so much for me in like my own
Hmm.
journey and my own like health. But that was also mixed with like, I guess some fear, being nervous, just because I've always did my artwork and my craft either for myself or
Right.
for friends as like a hobby. But I never took it as like, oh, I can actually like do this as like a business collaboration and to actually help someone get their business off the ground and get their brand off the ground. I was like, dang, I don't know, am I fit for that?
Hmm.
So yeah, I think initial impression was just like excitement because you were starting your own thing. And I think I just love that for you. And I was just excited to where that went. But also this thing is like looking at a blank canvas, right? You didn't have a name yet. And I'm just like, I don't know where this is going to go.
You and
What
me
if he
both,
doesn't
because
like
I
it?
that's why I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing, and I'm
Yeah.
letting someone else help me. But I think we built up that trust along the way, just of training and talking, for the past few years of like, man, I need someone that I know that I can trust and understands where I'm coming from too, to like help bring this into fruition, right? And I could remember, in the first couple meetings, it was just like you were almost interviewing me, and I'm like, dude, I don't have the answers right now. Like, let me go back and think because I didn't even think of those questions of like, you know, what do you want it to look like? What is the meaning? Do you have like a slogan? All those kind of things. And I'm like, all right, let me take a step back. Let me really like think about it. Go for a walk, get a workout in, and kind of like reset my mind on it. And that's why I appreciate because you were able to bounce all those questions to me and like really make me think a little bit more about what I want to do as opposed to like, let's just mock something up and like throw it out there and see if it works, right? So can you walk us through the process of, you know, creating something from scratch and just working closely, with me on that?
Yeah, and I think that it's rooted in like my design philosophy. So like you mentioned, I love sneakers. I grew up, it kind of ties into the whole like hip hop culture, basketball.
Hmm.
So I grew up loving sneakers and I've always wanted to just like customize and create my own. And I think the pandemic was just like transformative for all of us where that also was the time I started diving into customizing sneakers. My sister gifted me like a workshop in Toronto to customize my own thing, and I just like loved the process, and I think I just loved the result that came out of it. And I think that's where I started realizing how much I love the idea and the art of storytelling, right? Every piece of art, I said this too when it came to dance, like it's storytelling. And
Yep.
to me, when I make something, it has to mean something. And that's why I think it was easy. It was easy to design things for myself because, I've lived with myself my whole life. And so I knew
Right.
what was important to me. I knew the stuff that I liked. And so when I created my sneakers, I'm like, oh, like I love Japanese fashion. I love playing with fabric. And so I think I would like this. And this means something to me because I enjoy going deeper into like crafts and
Yep.
textiles, etc. So I think that is my design philosophy with anything. And even when I did like start doing graphic design, it's not like I'm creating complex things, right? Like I'm not
Hmm.
creating like these massive, like, very intricate detailed stuff. It's more of like hey, this came out of the fact that I'm very into this and I'm influenced by, this piece of music and this like show that I used to
Hmm.
watch. And that is what determined the colors and the contours and the style. And it also ties into like my fashion sense where I don't like very loud, very intricate detail stuff on clothes. It's almost like I love subtlety. I love subtle details where it's like,
Hmm.
like if like if you see the color, if
Right,
you see a
right, right,
certain
right.
line, I'm like, oh, that's from that show. I'm like, that's a really cool way of tying that theme in. And so that's how I apply it to, working with you, where I think that's why I started the conversation with, tell me about Brandon, tell me about what you, even if you don't have a name, what you deep down, what you want this to be or what you want it to represent. And I think I wanted to get that story out more than the name or more than the colors because I think that's not as important. Anyone can, we have all the colors in the world. We have all the hex
Right.
codes in the world. Like it's
But that was
more,
my idea. I was like, I just need to slap something on and like let's get after it, right? And I
yeah,
think the definitely the roles reversed because as a coach to you, I was more about I need to learn everything about you, your body, how you move, but also like just tell me about your life so I can relate it to the fitness, right? And then the roles reversed of like you asking me everything of like, hey, we really need to show and create something that is a representative of me, right, Coach Bwoo. And yeah, no, that was huge because I wouldn't have really had a path to even creating winning mentality, right? And as you can see in the video, for everybody that's watching, my hat is the new logo. The sign over here behind me is the original logo. So let's kind of get into that, of what we were working on and how we created that first initial like.
yeah, yeah. I just remember those first few interviews for the original logo, which just again, like it was like, what does Brandon like? What do you want to represent in this new brand, and what you want to do? What do you want to focus on? I remember that's when we started talking about like, you want to focus on sports training, you
Mhm.
want to focus on like injury prevention. And with fitness, you can like focus on a vast majority of things. And it was definitely an exercise of like honing in on like what you think your niche would be and what has been successful in the past. And so I remember, I think we had probably like three meetings about this, where the first one was trying to like gather information, kind of like word association to be like, oh,
Mhm.
winning mentality. I'm thinking like, dynamic. I'm thinking very like professional and clean. So it's all these descriptive words because when you when you don't have a clue what you do, you need to anchor yourself in something.
Yep.
And I think the story and these descriptors, and I think I remember even asking you like, if this brand was a person, I would like, how do we describe them, right? And I think that's when
It
I
clicked.
had something to start with and to be like, and I remember each time we finish, I summarize to you to be like, hey, this is what I got from that call. Is that like, do you think that's accurate? And the reason I wanted to do that was, it's hard to only do this with a couple of calls, and I want to make sure we're on the same page and we're communicating effectively throughout this process. Because the last thing I'd want is like to go off and start drawing a bunch of stuff and creating the
Right, right,
final
right.
thing, and you'd be like, "That's not what I had in mind." I had no idea what any of this means. So just bringing you along through the process in a process that's very uncertain, that's very weird, awkward at times
Yep.
because it's like hindsight's 2020, right? Like Nike looked like we see the swoosh and it makes sense to us looking hindsight, but I'm sure
Right.
during the time when it wasn't a thing, like I don't know what the swoosh means. Like what is that?
Yeah.
And so they
Exactly.
had to probably do a bunch of like, soul searching through it all to make that work and represent what they want. And so similar here where it's like um as I started getting those description words, I started sketching up some things, not even crazy details. It's just like, I think of, dumbbells. I think of, and I think when you were starting to talk about winning mentality, I started like playing around with the words, the acronym, what's it mean to like win, and something to know about myself too. Like I love typography. It's how I like to incorporate it in many parts of like my
Hmm.
designs and my art. So just like if it's WM, can I like play around with a W? Can I like mesh them together? Can I combine them? So I experimented with many different mocks that included type or was just like logo. Like, what if I just have like a dumbbell? I remember I'm like, what if I have like I forgot some of the concepts we had, but I was like, with sports, one of the coolest things was like a Letterman jacket or like those like
Right.
varsity jackets. So I started playing around with like, what if the WM looked like a varsity jacket, right? And tying into like a sports training, tying it into like the professionalism. And so I think I started like the second call after that interview was like, hey, here's some like initial concepts, right?
Yep.
Nothing final, nothing crazy, just like here's some pictures I drew. Here's some words that I associated with. Here's a slogan, right? And I think you also gave me some slogans you were really into. So yeah, it was definitely a lot of like iteration where like, here's what I'm thinking. What do you
Hmm.
think? Which it wasn't even like, oh, this is the one. It's more of like, which ones do you like? Circle,
Yeah. Which ones do
circle the
you like?
design that you like. Yeah, because there's like an infinite amount of possibilities. And I think it's just like the relationship we have is just how do we kind of hone in on these, like, the stuff I do mock up, which ones cater or like not cater, resonate with you. And you like either it says it means something to you or that's where your eye gravitated towards. And then you circle that. And I think because that's one of the challenges I notice when you're designing for someone else versus yourself. If it's like, there's so many times I was mocking stuff up for you and I'm like, this is so nice, or this is, I think Brandon will really like this. But that's not true. It's actually what Aldrich likes. It's
Yep.
me trying to think what you like. And then when I present something to you, you're like, oh, I really like this one. I'm like, that surprises me. I thought you'd really like this one, or like that was actually my least favorite one. And that's when I learned I'm like, oh, we're two different people at the end of the day. And there's at the end, and I'm designing for my client, which was you, right? And that was a big learning for me as someone doing this for the first time with a client, rather than like I'm gonna just design for myself. Yeah.
What I think really helped me was that you were actually a client of mine and understood what other people might be looking for and how could that help them reach to me where they knew exactly what I did, who I do it for, and and we ended up picking something pretty simple but powerful because when you look at the logo behind me, the original one, it's clearly a dumbbell, right? Like it looks like something to do with a weight. At the time, I liked camo, I still do, so we integrated that into it. But it was simple, it was powerful. Look at it, you could tell like, all right, this is probably about fitness. And if you didn't know the name, if you just saw WM, maybe that was more intriguing. Of like, all right, what does that mean? Then someone could dive more into that and understand, okay, this is what winning mentality is. It's a fitness company, has everything to do with training. And at that time, I was actually looking for something to do with online training and of like needing something to show online. And that's really ultimately why we needed to create, something for somebody to see. Right. And we finally got that in. That was probably what, 2021, like the end of 2021, going into
I'd
22.
say so, because I was still in SF, so that was definitely like
Yeah.
2021.
And I wanted to have it like again for the New Year's of like, hey, this is where we are. It's New Year's. I'm coming in hot with winning mentality. Like this is where most of the people want to start training again. And it helped though because it was like, oh, something refreshing. People who already were following me or knew me understood that I was trying to grow as a coach as well. And online training was kind of like the biggest thing there. So we were able to get that running. A couple years in, we would always check in. I know we were checking like, hey, how's business doing? And at times it'd be like, oh, it's great. But at other times it was like, man, I don't know, if online training is working in terms of like, is it going to be sustainable? Is it something I'm going to do 100% of the time? As we transition back into in-person training, which pretty much led us to last year, 2023, of like, hey, I think it's time to look at the brand as a whole, not just the logo, but the brand as a whole. Is it fitting me as a coach and what I want to get out to clients and athletes, right? So we decided to revamp the brand. I think the biggest thing you were saying was like, well, does it need to change? Like, how should we change it? Not just to change it just because. Do you remember, what were the most important like aspects of that once I came to you like, hey, let's change it up?
Yeah, yeah. I think I thought about it more, and this is, I don't know, again, I think this is like rooted in my engineering background. There's like the engineer in me where I'm like, if we do something and we make a decision to take action, like what's the purpose behind it? What's the why behind it? But honestly, I already had thoughts about modifying or making changes to the original logo because like I said, like that was the first time working with you, working with a client. And even though we called it like this is final and we obviously made the edits to make it like something that you were really into. At the end of the day, nothing's perfect, right? And we grow from our work. And so as I grew as a person, as a designer, I was also just like, man, I could have totally made this part better. I would improve this part. One of the challenges with the first logo is it doesn't work on like on certain surfaces. It might look awkward. It like certain things. It's kind of wide, or it works well with like landscape. But maybe yeah, portrait. I think it's a very
Mm-hmm.
like wide logo. So I mean, as and like I guess it's very cliche, but it's like you're gonna be your own critic. So yeah, I already had initial thoughts of like how to improve the logo. But when you came to me, I was just like, oh, like I want to hear you out. Like, what's your reasoning behind it? And I think when we had that catch up call, it totally made sense. I was like, yeah, like because you're pursuing this thing and growing, you're probably realizing the actual niches that is
Right.
working, what's not. And you know, even within sports training, it's still very wide, like a vast area. And I remember you telling me like um I think you had a lot of momentum with like high school programs and teaching like baseball teams and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I want to focus on rotational sports. And I'm like, what's a rotational sport? And, you're like saying baseball, golf.
It was like
Is
I
tennis a
think at the
rotational
time was
sport?
tennis, boxing, and to me it was like those are the one that's the clientele I was working with a lot in
Yeah.
the past 3 years, and that's like I could see myself. Okay, this is the niche I wanted to work in, right, and continue that avenue. And I came to you and I was like, I think I finally figured out what winning mentality is, and like why I think we need to rebrand it as a whole. Just like this is where I want to lead to. These are the people I want to cater to. Um, and the word dynamic really stuck, I think, with both of us. Of like, all right, I need a more dynamic look because that's how I'm also going to be training, in a dynamic setting. And you know, did you feel did you feel like me coming to you was like, forget the past logo, like we need to just make a new one, or was it like you were excited about it, leading this project again, for a second time?
Yeah. I think, let's see, what did I feel like during that time? I think a part of it was like, oh, I was curious. And I don't know, maybe like a bit of like the imposter syndrome of like, was like the first logo not that great or
Right,
didn't age
right,
well?
right, right.
But also, yeah, it makes sense. Like if you think of a company or a brand like as a living thing, everything grows, and sometimes the logo doesn't match or fit whatever you end up like going into or you pivot into. But yeah, it's definitely, I think with this whole process, it is also a process of letting go of ego. I
Yeah.
think
Oh
that's like
yeah,
one
me
of the
too.
biggest things that hurt, either a business person or a designer to like be too attached to their original designs and
Hmm.
to be like, okay, like let's move forward. Like what direction makes sense, what's actually working, right? I think that's a big ego check to be like, this is the original philosophy of the brand or the business, but this is actually what's working. And so I think that had to you probably had to make a decision on that side to be like, okay, let's actually listen to what our clients want and what's working and let's pursue that regardless of your initial vision of like winning mentality. So yeah, I think once I caught up and this during this time is also like a very transformative time in my personal life because it was, if I remember correctly, this is also since I work in tech as a software engineer, like I also got laid off from my
Hmm.
role and I was like I took the year off and I was just reflecting on what work meant to me.
Right.
Do I
Internally.
just want to go straight into like design? Do I want to do something else? And so I was also I had a lot of questions for myself that I was like pondering. And when you came to me, I was just like, oh, like this is cool. Like it's a cool opportunity to keep pursuing like that creative
Yep.
side of me. Yeah, I think since then, like after that catch up we had and what you were thinking about it, I was just like excited to really do well and to really like go back into the process and iterate on it. And it helped that I also didn't have like a day job that I was like also busy with.
So like you
So
can put
it
more
was
time
just,
into it for yourself.
yeah, yeah. And it was fun. Like it goes back to me and you training, right? Where it's like, this didn't feel like work. It was just like a cool, fun, creative project that, obviously there's still accountability and, deadlines you want to hit, but it wasn't like just like the day-to-day routine. So
Yeah.
that was really cool.
Yeah, man. I remember just like the first slide deck that you sent me. I was super excited because I remember running to Quan. I was like, "Yo, look what Aldrich just made! Like, look at this whole slide deck! Like, this is." I could see, the where we wanted to get to, where the brand was going to be taken off, and it was just exciting as a whole. And like, you played such a huge role in shaping winning mentality. And but I'm like, yeah, I'm curious now. So you've done it 2 times. Did this project, impact your own life career in any way? Or did anything unexpected come out of that?
Yeah. I I'm even thinking about it now. I don't think like honestly like I don't think the results or the impact was like, oh, I got like even more clients and all that stuff. Like honestly, I actually didn't end up focusing as much on like the graphic design side of things. And I ended up getting like a new role in tech. But what I think the impact of that thing was it made me realize how much how important it is to include what I enjoy and what's fun to me in like any work I do. Like as an example, with this rebrand that we had, like the second time around, when you mentioned dynamic, when you mentioned rotational sports and all that, rather than creating something more mechanical or more generic, I started thinking about what's been relevant in my life. And a big part of my life, and it always has been, but more so like in the last couple of years, has been like anime and like
Yeah, dude.
watching
I
anime.
remember
And
that.
so I literally incorporated things from like Beyblade and Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff I grew up with, stuff that made me like happy and nostalgic as a kid into the design. Where it's like, yeah, I'm designing for Brandon, but he hired me to put my own creative, you
Hmm.
know, flavor and twist into this. So this, it's almost like giving myself the permission and having the confidence to be like, put put yourself in this, right?
Yeah,
Before
like
I
you
used to
had
be
the
like,
lead on it.
you're right. And before it was like, oh, what would the client want? Only what like what's the client's like personality and stuff, which is very important. But it's like, well, you're also the artist, and
Hmm.
at the end of the day, this is your work. So is there something from you that you can include in this? And I was like, I think I was probably scared to do that before, or like nervous to do that. But now I'm like, this is just fun. So I'm just gonna
Yeah,
put in like,
exactly.
what happens if it looks like a Beyblade twirling, right? Because it's rotational, it's dynamic. And so I'm sure when I show you that first board of like influences, it looked hella ridiculous because it was just like there's like Beyblades here, there's like Yu-Gi-Oh cards here, and I'm just like, this is where my mind's going. I'm sorry.
At that same time, I was like, man, I do like anime a lot. I even remember sending you a bunch of things on like lightning, whether that was like a lightning bolt,
Yes,
like flashes from like Dragon Ball Z, all those kind of like more dynamic
yes,
electrifying things. And it was like, all
yes,
right, we're on the same page. And electricity was like a big thing because in the fitness world for me, I like to feed off everybody's energy, client's energy of like if this client's energy is down a little bit, I'm gonna meet you at that level, or if it's up, I'm gonna be hyping you up. So it was like, all right, those kind of things resonates with me too. So it was like it was cool to see us bouncing ideas off on each other, and I'm like, oh, I like that, and you're like, yeah, I really like that, those kind of things, and it became more natural to create something that I wanted to put out there, and you really understood that, and
yeah.
it was like
I think
that's
there's
why
a
it was so
lot.
integral to like be a part of the new revamp of the brand. Before we wrap up, is there any advice you'd like to share to any of the listeners, whether it's about fitness, your creative journey, or just life in general?
Yeah, I think it really ties into all the stuff we've been talking about, even with this, right? It's, Goku, like, got the shirt
Yep.
going. So I'm locked in. The big advice is honestly, and this is easier said than done, but it's understanding that we're all unique, right? One of one people. And ties into the personal training where there's no one size fits all solution. You're going to hear a million and one pieces of advice about getting fit. I think it's just knowing how to listen to yourself and your body as to what you need and what you're looking for and try to pursue that and not being afraid to explore and experiment. Where I grew up, I think like a perfectionist, thinking there's only one right way to do things. And what I learned from, working with Brandon on personal training, or when I learned from graphic design is there's an infinite amount of ways to go about something, and it's just about experimenting and being curious. And same thing with our physical fitness journey, right? Like if the big box gym isn't working for you, get curious as to what physical fitness means to you and find that
Yep.
and pursue that. Because I think one of the biggest difficulties and issues we have in like Western society is we think physical fitness is always going to a gym. But then people who do like manual labor work, or people who do, sports, or things that are day to day, like going for a walk, we easily dismiss that. But as long as like you're moving and you're active and you're dynamic, it's a game of energy, right? So opening
Yeah.
up your mind to just like the possibilities of what um, fitness and movement means, I think that's like a great goal to have for, the new year. But yeah,
Awesome, man. Yeah. A big thank you to Aldrich for joining today on this episode, sharing his journey, from the beginning of fitness to become an integral part of building the winning mentality brand. And, if there's one takeaway from today's episode, it's this. It's a winning mentality isn't something you're born with. It's something you build one step at a time. Whether it's in fitness, business, the creative side or life, those small, consistent wins add up to something powerful. So yeah, again, thank you, man. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for all
thank
for
you for
tuning
having me.
into this episode too. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little extra motivation. Next time we'll dive into two different worlds of fitness that stem from the same Woo tree, exploring how two diverse paths can lead to a common goal. So until then, stay active, my friends.
That's a dope next episode.